so much out of it. Yeah, I get choked up with it. Okay. Now we get back to I can start off with the mission itself, but I think it needs a little background before I get into the bloody stuff. And I do have a copy of the original citation that the government has posted at that time. The government has a presidential citation. I will not read the whole thing, but I have copies here, and I'll leave them here so you get all the details. But some of the highlights of this citation is related to not only what the flight crew did, and but it mentions very nicely in the beginning of the citation, and I will read it. Ground crews worked with enthusiasm to ensure the mechanical perfection of their planes for the forthcoming mission. Now, the ground crews were dedicated to their airplanes like they were family. And I always appreciated this, even as a young person with not so much sentiment from large things, but this I appreciated. These guys worked all night on your airplane to make sure it was properly ready for the next mission. And if you brought that airplane back, busted up, they kind of felt bad too, I'll tell you. Sorry we didn't bring ours back, but probably bothered them a lot too also. And on the citation it also says the 451st is outstanding performance of duty in armed conflict with the enemy. Those are powerful words in my estimation. And this is so well written. And in those days, a well-written general order was more or less cold and stoic. This has a lot of feeling to it, so you may appreciate reading it. And they bring something up with also that I never knew, that the fighters that did come after us, they came abreast, 6 to 10 abreast, and like Wynn said, out of the clouds from below us, and attacked us with 20 millimeter cannon. And again, I say 20 millimeter cannon instead of 50 millimeter cannon. If it was a machine gun, our self-sealing tanks would have sealed off punctures into the gas tank, because our tanks were in the upper wing above the Bombay. And they put a 20 millimeters in one of those tanks, and there's no self-sealing tank that's going to hold that gasoline back. And that's what happened to us. And then, of course, it goes on to tell us the enemy at this time was highly aggressive, and they were. I say, well, we got into the combat area, and we knew that we were going to get jumped at any time. The pilot knew at last, because the first thing you felt was a machine gun going off in your airplane. Then you knew they're coming. We were trying to defend ourselves. And then, of course, the radio started to tell what direction they're coming from, where there was, how many, and so forth. And let's see, what else? I got it highlighted here, but my gosh, I got to focus. That gallant crew battled their way through the overwhelming enemy opposition to the target. That's important, too. They were never turned away. The 451st has the reputation of a group, that always, except for weather, or something like that, the enemy never got away with turning us away. And I think that's very, very simple to be very proud of as a group. The Germans definitely were surprised at the tenacity of the American airmen was what it was. And kind of took them down a peg. They thought they were superior. And now we get down to the last comment, and I think it's a great one. The 451st Bombardment Group has upheld the highest tradition of the military service, thereby reflecting great credit upon themselves and the armed forces of the United States. And that is so true. All right, now we get back into the my personal stuff. So this, as I said, there's copies here. Anybody wants of that citation with more detail, very good detail too. A little background before I get to the morning of the takeoff, the 23rd of August, 1944. As Wayne mentioned, the 22nd was no bargain either. And that was the first mission we flew as a crew. When you arrived at the 451st Bomb Group, they broke the crew up temporarily to more or less train us on what's expected on the mission. And of course, I was separated from my co-pilot, my whole crew, and I flew with other crew members to learn the missions we were on, and we saw flags but no fighters, and it didn't seem like it was that threatening. However, on the 7th mission, we formed together and we came back to our own aircraft, and when we flew overseas, from Mitchell Field to the Azores, down across North Africa, and up to the 451st Bomb Group. And all a bunch of kids. Except the flight engineer, who was a little, they called him Pop. He was a nice guy. Karpinski was his name. He was killed. However, you think about the irony of it, that I didn't even have a driver's license. And here they gave me a $280,000 airplane with 9 guys to fly across 5,000 miles. Unbelievable. And a lot of guys did it. It's a salute to the country. The people that organized this type of activity and training, that this job got done. And we had 2 wars to fight on both sides of the United States. And they accomplished this. They supplied us. And as I say, it's a miracle. It's a genius. They had no computers, hand typewriters. You hit a key, you get the damn thing to print. No electricity. And we got this accomplished. And it was so well organized. I have, in my possession, I'm lucky to have it, is my service record. On that service record, about the size of the newspaper sheet, 1 page, has everything I ever did in service. And it's very accurate. And it was all hand entry, no computers. Amazing. And this didn't just happen once, it happened thousands and thousands of times. So it's quite a tribute to this country. What we can do, we have to. Can't handle it. Okay. Now we're at the morning, say the 22nd was the day before the 4th. What's the day before the 23rd? But that, as I said, that mission was not a piece of cake either. And that was the first mission that we flew as a crew. And Frank, my co-pilot, he hadn't been flying much, and this was his first really deadly mission. And it was really serious as far as enemy fire goes. It was pretty intense. So we got out of the airplane in Italy after the mission, and he said, "Hey, Bob, is it always this way?" Frank, this is new to me too. But on the 23rd, it was like any other morning. They get you up early, before it's even light out. You get briefed, you get your breakfast, and you draw out your equipment. And that's another thing, when you draw out your equipment, these details stick with me for some reason. They're so meaningful, and you'll see why. You're sort of like in a half weight, and you get your flight jacket and your flak helmet, and of course you get a parachute harness, and you draw all this boots and all that good stuff. You draw this out just before you take off. The whole crew has to do this. And you start fitting this harness on the tarmac. And your buddies help you, because it's got to fit pretty good. Yeah, these guys bail out, they slipped out of their harnesses. That's deadly. So we took care of getting our harnesses on properly, and it was a thing you did with your crew. They helped each other out. And of course, the harness is designed to take up most of the pressure from your whole body and slow you down. But there's only two areas that most of this pressure is felt, and you had to make sure they were adjusted properly. Now, we've drawn out our equipment, had our breakfast, looked at the bomb. We knew what the mission was. We knew it was going to be a good 8-hour day. We were going to have a full day, because that's about how long it took to do this mission round trip. And we checked out the airplane. The pilot went around, and he was supposed to check it out, and they call it a walk around. He didn't know what he was looking for. He had to walk with his crew chief. His crew chief knew what he was looking for. And you more or less check the outside of the airplane, and finally you get inside, strap yourself in. But on the way in, you're fastening what they call your payload. Your payload is your bomb bay full of these huge bombs. They're looking at you. It's a power bullet. And it's intimidating, but we get ourselves strapped in, and it takes us a while to take off and form it. And, you know, even takeoff is a thrill. I mean, here you've got a full tank of gas, you've got a full bomb load, and you've got a runway that looks like it's only from here to the wall. So, what you do is, you put your face in the airplane, you firewall your throttle, stand on the brakes, and say, there you go, let it go. And you rumble up. You think forever it's never going to get enough speed up to take off. And then finally it does gather enough speed, you got just enough runway to get off. And it's this way for everybody, not only me. The whole bomb group has to go through this. And unfortunately, there had been times when power was lost, a few strokes of the piston failed, and that's all you needed. And they were off the end of the runway and into the woods. Bomb load off. Now I can't tell you what happened. This is the things you did. Day in and day out, these guys did this stuff. I only did it for 7.5 missions. But we'll get to that. So as I say, the 22nd was also a mission to Austria, which was close by the 23rd mission. We went to Austria, I think, to bomb some oil reserves near Vienna. And they didn't like this, because they jumped us on the way out of there very badly. Unfortunately, I got through that one. However, the next day, they were more than ready for us. And as the citation says, I didn't know this, but they were coming up at us outside of Vienna, right over the Austrian Alps. They were coming at us with 6 to 10 airplanes abreast with 20mm cannons. And unfortunately, they caught my aircraft. And at the time of impact, I felt it. A couple of thumps. That's all it felt like. I thought, well, that's good. We can get through this one. Then little by little things started to happen that's supposed to happen. There was no control. The rudders were gone. Ailerons were gone. Everything. Only thing I had left to steer that airplane was the throttle. And I'm drifting around in formation, so I'd ease back on the throttle, so I'd fall out of formation, and that bumped some friend of mine. And I still thought I had a chance. until I got a tap on the shoulder and was instructed to look over my shoulder into the Bombay. There was a raging fire in that Bombay. What had happened is the 20 millimeters pierced those gas tanks above the Bombay and got that fire started, and that gasoline was pouring down into that Bombay. And I think at this moment is when we lost the 4 crewmen in the rear. That fire must have caught them unaware, and they didn't have a chance to jump out. Never heard anything what happened to them, never found any remains, never heard any reports of what happened to those 4 men. Everybody forward of the Bombay made out okay, we got out one way or the other. And getting out of a B-24 from the pilot seat was so far didn't either. The part that always amazes me is, all right, I put that harness on the tarmac. Everybody talks about that harness. That had to be adjusted right. And here it had a couple of hooks with clamps on it. And the parachute itself, which we did thousands of times. Every time we went up the flight, you took your harness, the parachute, and you put it behind your seat. And you reached out and grabbed the handle of it. And the parachute, no bigger than a loaf of bread, weighed about 7 pounds. But it was what saves your life. You snap that on these rings. I don't remember doing any of this, by the way, but this is what you did. You snapped it on, then you worked your way down the steps and out the Bombay through the fire. That I can remember. I can remember that part. So I replaced the co-pilot. I had to replace the co-pilot with this trip because Frank got my regular co-pilot had a malaria attack. They gave me a replacement co-pilot. And for some reason he was hesitating. I don't know why. I mean, that fire was scaring the hell out of me. I knew we had to get out. Nobody was under control anymore because I was behind them. So I finally gently, they were pushing his shoulder blades out. He went, and I followed. That was great. Because once you're out of that chaos, and your plane disappears, your parachute opens up, and your boots snap off, you lose them right away. It gets quiet. You can't believe how quiet it sounds. All you can hear in the distance is the engines from the other aircraft. And of course, you look down, and that's a little disconcerting because, as I mentioned before, this was over the Austrian Alps, and also rocks, and that's where you were going to land. And they were pretty high because this is August, and there was still snow on these mountains. That's how high they were. So we didn't have much time before we made contact with the ground. Fortunately, out of all the guys that were built, there was quite a few of us guys that were down with me. Several other planes were hit too at the same time. I landed on the only grassy spot on the mountainside. A lot of guys were hurt bad, falling into the rocks, breaking legs, big scabs, big chunks of meat taken out. And then, of course, there was some wounded that bailed out also that were hurt pretty bad. So when we were captured, we were on top of this mountain. We didn't know how to get down. So the people that captured us started to lead us down the mountain. And we had to carry, there was about 7 or 8 of us. About 4 of us were ambulatory. And we could carry these guys down. And we carried them down. Well, we figured out the snow was still up there, at least 10 to 14,000 feet up. And took us, and we carried us down into a little town on the base of the mountain. It took us 2 days to get down. Of course, from there I got a turn to Stalag Tree. Now the fun began, because we did play bridge all day. I wonder where the next meal was going to come from. And I could go on, but I'll cut it short by saying that we were finally rousted out of that Stalag after 5 months. And 4 months we spent on the road, tramping around, staying away from being repatriated or being caught by the Russians. The Germans marched us all. We went right across Germany, from the Dresden area all the way up to the Nuremberg area. Nuremberg area was an interesting stop because there they had a little work camp that they housed us in temporarily while they tried to find some food for us. They didn't even have food for themselves. And we were there for about 2 weeks. And in 2 weeks, we could see Nuremberg from the full hill we were on. Nuremberg was a pretty big city. The Allies started to bomb Nuremberg day and night. In several days, that city disappeared. The Germans said, "I'll get you out of here." Those civilians know you're up there, you're ours. So the Germans were starting to keep us alive. After that, they got us away from that city. We're on the road again. And as we're traveling, P-47s used to come over and wiggle their wings because they knew we were there. They had enough information to know that we were on the prisoners of war would be a tramp down South Germany. And I'll tell you, that was good to see. Your spirits get low after a while. It was good to see that. So this meant that the Allies knew where we were. And this got to General Patton. He heard about it. And with that, he sent in what they call a spearhead invasion. And he liberated us right under the nose of the Germans. Chased them right out of camp and took over the camp and got us out of there. Brought us to France. And then we went home. And that's all I got to say. Just one thing I'd like to say about the American GI and the fighting American GI. It seems to me they felt, and I'm talking about every GI, put his life on the line, but somebody had to do it.